So the Stewardship Forum was formed as this multi-interest, multi-stakeholder forum about stewardship, Prescott National Forest and surrounding lands. The main thing they've been working on is this whole trails planning process. So, but there's some different components of things going on here. So, Chris, do you want to start?
Yeah, the first thing on the list there is the Prescott Circle Trail, and this has been a plan led by the community to build a 50-plus mile loop around the city of Prescott. And currently we're about 90% done on that. We had a logo, we changed the logo. I came up with this logo. I think it really shows what it is. It's a multi-use, non-motorized trail around the city. It's multi-agency. It goes through the Forest Service, City of Prescott, BLM land, and then college campuses as well, Embry-Riddle University. So it's coming together, and we're almost done with that. The way that the city has approached this is we don't necessarily didn't have the land in many cases, so we're purchasing easements through state trust land. So that's how we've made it happen on the city end, and the way that we've made it on the ground is coming up with a design and then having volunteers build it. We are going to contract a small portion away, but most of it has been done with volunteers. So that's how we're doing so far. Oh yeah, we can. I brought a bunch of these maps.
They're over here on the table.
On the table. This is something that I've been involved in ever since I got here in 2006, and this I think is the 9th edition. And we change it every year. It seems like more than once a year sometimes, because we're building trails so fast. We built 40 miles since 2007 in the city, mainly in the Dells, but many other places too. And we go through about 40,000 of these maps a year now. And the way this is funded is there's 24 sponsors in here that put money in, about $300. That gets us about 20,000 copies, and then we have our tourism department buy the other 20,000. So we kind of leverage that money to get the tourism and economic development people to fund it as well. So very successful. We have it free of trailheads. We have it. Each of those sponsors with their $300 gets 500 maps that they can sell for $1. So they can make a little bit of money if they want, or they can give it away, whatever they want to do. So this has been a very successful item. This has been a big part of the promotion of the Mile High Trail system, which is the City of Prescott Trails.
Spike?
The Prescott Trails Safety Coalition came about out of a collaborative effort that has been ongoing since 1999. We started developing the Aldo Pit and the Williamson Valley Trail System in collaboration with the motorized people who are active in the Aldo Pit area and the non-motorized desires of people along the Williamson Valley corridor and access to Granite Mountain. These two systems were developed through collaboration and worked very well. And as a consequence of more use of the trails, we started having conflicts between users. And because of the success we had in our collaboration, we developed the Prescott Trails Safety Coalition. Hikers, bikers, horsemen, and motorized, although the motorized people were not quite so involved. We were having more conflict between bikers and horses and some hikers. And the Safety Coalition and the collaboration that we developed earlier came about and has worked very well. We've developed a system of reporting incidences, and I think that just the reporting of incidents has gone down since we have been making people more aware of potential problems. And I think the forest will agree that we've had some success in mitigating conflicts in the Prescott Trails Safety Coalition. And it's all volunteer effort, and we meet every other month and just discuss things that we can do now and things that we wish we could do. And the things that we do now, like putting up signs, filtering on the trail with boulders and things like that so that bicyclists have to slow down, and trying to keep the trails open to everybody so that we don't run into the problem of closing trails at certain times and things like that. And it seems to be working.
So, Omar, do you want to talk about this?
Sure. So with the Prescott Circle Trail, that and the projects that Spike had mentioned, they kind of gave some momentum to looking at reevaluating our trails system to provide more opportunities. And for example, the Prescott Circle Trail on the forest, we pretty much completed our portion of that circle trail, but now we've been doing more refinements, I guess, to correct reroutes, to correct poor alignments, things like that. So that kind of gained some momentum to have additional trails opportunities for different user groups. So what the result was the Greater Prescott Trails Planning effort, and that's looking at the Prescott Basin as sort of this hub for trails opportunities to connect it to Chino Valley, Prescott Valley, and connecting the community with the forest and the surrounding, and our neighbors and surrounding communities. And this was a pretty elaborate process, and it actually happened fairly quickly, I think, with the progress, because we started it in May of last year, May 6th, and then a year later, we had another workshop sort of to give everybody an update on all that had happened.
Well, actually, we have that in the next one.
Okay, great.
Sorry. Well, if there's actual meeting by meeting, so you can talk about this part.
So here's Prescott, and kind of looking at it as like a pie, we sort of created 5 different areas, and it didn't matter, you know, what jurisdiction it was, because people don't really care what jurisdiction they're in, they just want to go out on trails. So we looked at it with that approach, and had, I remember off the top of my head, a couple hundred proposals come in, and we started off the workshop by just, you know, having these maps laid out with these different zones, and people just went up there and drew whatever proposals they had, whether it was to create a new trail, to realign an existing trail to make it more sustainable, or even just to give some feedback that this isn't a really good trail, we don't really use it, or even to provide additional trailhead opportunities. And we took that information, and then we looked at which ones were the most popular proposals, and then we had to come out with a system of ranking those, of ranking all that information. So the user groups, along with the forest and City of Prescott, working with Chris, created some ranking criteria so it would have some sort of value that was relevant for everybody. And so we took that information, and then those are the projects that moved forward, and basically we had short-term, medium-term, long-term projects. And then a year later, that's what we shared. That's what we shared back with the group is you know, the end product was those proposals. And so from here on out, that's what we're working with, is to try and implement those proposals that were identified.
So we basically came up with a short list of trails, you know, in the Forest Service, in the cities, And now we're working on how to make those happen.
Right, and it's the city of Prescott, town of Prescott Valley, Prescott National Forest, Yavapai County,
Dewey Humboldt as well.
Dewey Humboldt, town of Chino Valley, though they have been less involved. And then, but the whole effort is convened by the Stewardship Forum. So there's user groups and agencies, local government, kind of working together on this.
And sort of by coincidence, so we had reported out a year later, and then the group kind of agreed that we should do at least an annual report out just to give people an update on the progress that we're making with this effort.
So everything is on greaterprescotttrails.net, or it should be on, if it's updated. So that's a website, that's actually a Google site, so it's free, but it can be more independent. Greaterprescotttrails.net is the domain name that you can just purchase. It's an easy way to have a website without it costing very much. One key to success. The convener is the Stewardship Forum, which is multi-user. Because of the collaborative outreach that each of those groups did, there was high participation in these workshops, 150, 75, 75 or so. So we maintained a high degree of participation. There was a lot of communication between you guys and your respective groups through the year. So maintaining that connection. People seem to feel like this was a positive process, like they were maybe going to have a voice. The trick is then to keep the momentum going and actually implement some of the stuff they come up with.
And in developing the workshop, it was, all these partners that are listed up there. So it was all the partners developing that workshop, coming together at the workshop, and then working together to go through all the information. And so the whole thing really was a collaborative process of everybody that's up there and more.
Right, so that's the welcome at the kickoff. Everybody talked for a minute. And so that demonstrates the collaboration, builds trust. Everybody that came could probably connect to at least one person up there and say, I trust that, I'm represented in the leadership that organized it. Because they were involved, it was a better design process, the whole thing. And more support, shared responsibility. For example, Rob Halen, who couldn't be here today because he's out of town, he does volunteer GIS work, so he spent hours and hours creating these amazing maps. All the priorities got put on those maps, and they're up on the website. But you think about shared responsibility, sharing the workload, all of that, and that's a good demonstration of how that can work. Gary?
I have a question for Chip and Steve. Steve, you happen to be more well known on this side of the mountain than our economic development person. Well, I don't even know that person's name in Prescott. And thank you for being here. If this was on your side of the mountain, would there be a bigger political representation than here?
Are you talking in terms of elected officials?
Yes.
Yes, I think so. We really concentrated on trying to bring the elected officials into the process.
And they'll talk about that.
So question about the stewardship forum. So it's broader than trails, but the trails happens to be the first priority project that came from the stewardship forum? That's a question.
It seemed like all the public that came, about 80% were there because of trails. They wanted to see action on trails.
But didn't that come out of the Sustainable Recreational Planning meetings we had before that? From the meetings we had before all this stuff, that's what was the highest priority that came out of this area was trails, which is kind of common in all the areas. Trails was one of the highest priorities.
Right, and so I refer everybody back to the Sustainable Recreation Strategy, because this is where we, some of the key topics were highlighted, and trails ranked top of the list. So that's really kind of where the focus was, because that's where the interest was at the time. But it's a living document, so we can always revisit it if things, if you want to stay trails, if you want trails to remain a priority, they certainly can. If you want to put more focus into volunteerism or education or other areas, that's part of this whole document, this process.
Yeah, like something that came up that didn't get prioritized early on was fire issues. But it was based on who was there. So there's all kinds of opportunity for what happens in the future, but new people that would be part of those efforts. One thing that's not on the slide, but that's our last meeting, the topic was really about how to keep this going. So once they come up with the set of short-term, medium-term, long-term, narrowed set of priorities that's helpful for each agency, in addition to each agency deciding what are you going to actually do, is we kind of set it up to where once a year there would be a big community meeting to kind of verify, yes, these are still the priorities, maybe tweak that a bit, time it so it informs your program of work meetings where you make your budget decisions, and that there's a steering committee, coordinating team that would meet 2 or 3 other times in the year to keep that ball going and to be a multi-user forum. So that's the last, where this discussion is now, is how to set that up so that those meetings happen and it's timed when the decisions are made by the different plan managers.
So can I just, for the people that are from other forests, one thing I want to highlight that Spike was talking about that maybe he undersold a little bit, but because there was this collaborative already, these people talking, then there were some issues, that could have blown up. I mean, people getting hurt on trails, biking, horsing, accidents. Instead of that polarizing people and everybody coming and saying they want their own separate trail, these guys pulled everybody together. They all got together and they developed a safety ethic and safety signing. So you go out on all the trails and it's who yields to who. And it's just the coolest damn thing. I mean, when I go anywhere, I tell people about it because I've been so many other places where there's not that working relationship.
I'd say it did blow up, it didn't remain polarized, it blew up and then the mushroom clubs.
Well, and part of the Greater Prescott Trails Planning process is we said, okay, the Trail Safety Coalition is dealing with the real concrete stuff about trail safety. So let's have this more comprehensive, strategic look at the whole system. So it's kind of like 2 important things going on.
Well, I think in the development of trails, as we're looking at 5 years and 10 years in the development of trails that we're looking towards down the line, the safety issue is always uppermost now in everybody's mind. Who's going to be using these trails? How do you access these trails? Are there big circular loops you have to go in and out the same trail? And how do you park horse trailers and cars at the same trailheads, and where the best place is and the safest way to access these trails? So it's sort of grown out of the original idea of just mitigating problems.
And I also want to point out that it's evolved a little bit more into, we're using the Prescott Trail Safety Coalition as a scoping mechanism as well with our recreation event permits. Because they have caught a couple things on there where we had a mountain bike event scheduled on a holiday weekend that would have coincided during a high use period at one of the horse camps. So we made some adjustments with the permittee on that one to avoid safety issues that could result in mountain bike event and peak use on the horse trail.
So now there's a lot of dialogue across the groups and stuff. So anything else you guys want to say about Greater Prescott Trails Planning or anything else Stewardship Forum?
Well, it's one of the first times that on this side of the mountain that all these groups got together and working together for collaborative effort. We saw it more on the Verde side, been going for years. But on this side, it's always been a lot harder to get all the jurisdictions and groups together, working together. And this was a great effort in finally getting all those talking together and working together. It was a good outcome.
I think it is, I mean, we have to look 20 years down the road, 50 years down the road. What's this area gonna look like? Why are people moving here? Why are people staying here? Why are people visiting? And, you know, I see it on the city, you know, like I said, we've doubled out, you know, almost tripled our trails in the city, but our baseline trails, I have trail counters on them, are still going up. So, say the Peavine Trail, when I got here in 2007, it was about 28,000 visits a year. Now it's up to 64,000 visits a year. So those baseline trails, even though we've tripled the amount of trails within the city, are still going up. So it's something that has to be looked at, you know, how are we going to grow? How are we going to meet this demand? You know, the city is promoting, how do we provide, you know, these trails that people are coming to?
Thank you guys very much.